Hello, my name is John Sandbach. This is my friend and fellow astrologer Sandra Sandy. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the book I wrote called The Circular Temple. This is a book of astrology interpretations. It's the interpretations of the degrees of the zodiac. And it first got started in 1984 when I channeled a set of degree symbols called the Chandra symbols. I did this with my friend Lisa Leopold. The Chandra symbols were published in a book called The Dwadashamsas Degree Analysis and Deeper Meanings, Part 2, Chandra Symbols, by Secret Publications, publisher Ray Merriman. When this book was first published, it happened very, very quickly. The symbols were all channeled within just one day. And I was going to an astrology convention shortly after that, where I met with Ray, and he asked me if there was anything I wanted to add to my book on the Dwadashamsas. And I said yes, I had just channeled this set of degree symbols. And he asked me if I wanted to include it in the book, and I said yes. So I went home and I wrote very short interpretations of all 360 symbols, and they were published in that book. Then, at a later date, a number of years later, the astrologer Elias Lonsdale of California published a book called Inside Degrees, which were an interpretation of the Chandra symbols. And that's a wonderful book, by the way. It's really great. A good deal, I'm really going over this very quickly because there's a lot more there, but I want you to get a general picture of the scope of this book. 20 years later, I got this urge to channel a secondary set of degree symbols, a second set, known as the Omega symbols. And didn't know why I wanted to do this. I was thinking, wow, there's already, a set of these symbols, and people had been using them and really liked them. But I went ahead and did it. I sent them to Elias, and he explained to me that he felt there were 4 sets of degree symbols that now mirrored the ascendant, the descendant, the nadir, and the midheaven. Elias feels that the Sabian symbols correspond to the ascendant, that the original set of symbols I channeled, the Chandra symbols, correspond to the descendant, and that the Omega symbols, the second set I channeled, correspond to the nadir of the chart. And that another set of symbols called the Hyperion symbols, channeled by Gavin Kent McClung, represent the midheaven symbols. So now we had these 4 sets of symbols. And I started a blog on the internet called Twinkle Twinkle, in which I analyzed my Chandra and Omega symbols together. And one point I want to make to you is that it's very interesting how the Western mind is very much into right, wrong, yes, no, a kind of exclusivity. So that at first I got some flack about these symbols because people, said, well, we use the Sabian symbols, which is the most traditional set, the most used set. None of these symbols are meant to replace each other. Okay? The Sabian symbols are very valid. What the Chandra symbols do is they amplify the degree meanings, as do the Omega symbols. If you look in the sky at 1 degree of the sky, you will see literally thousands and thousands of galaxies within that 1 degree. So each degree is very, very complicated and represents worlds upon worlds within itself. So what I'm looking to do is to understand these degrees at deeper and deeper levels, and one of the ways we do that is by cross-comparing the symbols, so that, say, for any 1 degree like Taurus 13, we look at the Chandra symbol, the Omega symbol, the Sabian symbol, and this gives us a more and more fuller picture of what that degree means. Now, in the Circular Temple book, you will find that there are two other sets of degrees used. One is the Pleiadian and the other is the Azoth. And how these came about was, when I looked at Gavin Kent McClung's Hyperion symbols, which are meant to go with the midheaven, I found them very, they're very worldly. They're about very common, everyday worldly sorts of things. Which is nothing wrong with that, but that's the wavelength on which they focus. And I focus on a much more kind of magical, otherworldly sort of wavelength. And so I decided that I would try looking at his own Hyperion symbols and actually see what I would come up with as a symbol behind his symbol. And that's how the Azoth symbols were born. And if you go through and look at his Hyperion symbols, there's a whole book about those symbols, and you compare those to the Azoth symbols, you'll see that they're very, very similar. Did the same thing with the Sabian symbols. Rechanneled those and called the rechanneled version the Pleiadian symbols. I was kind of very insecure about doing this because I wasn't sure of the validity of it, but Elias Lonsdale, whose opinion I greatly respect, he's really one of the finest astrologers around, he said he felt like that what these other sets do is that they reinfuse life into the original set. So, when you go and look at the Circular Temple, you will find, for any 1 degree, all 4 of these symbols. The Pleiadian symbol, the Chandra symbol, the Omega symbol, and the Azoth symbol. Do you have any questions? Did I leave anything out?
No, I think you covered that pretty well.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty complicated, but... And I want to say something else. You know, if you are an astrologer wanting to use these and you open up the book and you look at these 4 degrees that go with 1 symbol, you might feel overwhelmed by the information. Don't worry about it. The best way to proceed, look at what pops out to you. Look at all 4 symbols and look at the one that touches you, the one that strikes your imagination, and go with that. You certainly don't have to use all 4 symbols for each degree. Okay.
Right. Yeah, the way I like to use them, and I don't know if this is a good place here, I mean, I like using them as an oracle.
Yes, and this is something that has been done with the Sabian symbols. Even if you're not an astrologer, what you can do is you can ask a question and then pick one of the 360 degrees at random and use that as the answer for your question. It's very much like the I Ching.
Yeah. Or the tarot card.
Right. The Circular Temple was recently featured in an art show about spiritual art, in which a computer was set up on my website where the book, The Circular Temple, was, and people would come up and at the art show and ask questions, and then the website would randomly pull up one of the degrees to answer their question.
For example, one day we were having a memorial for someone very dear for us, and I was just flipping through, and this one came out to me, and I'd like to read it to you. The Azoth Oracle said, "Space aliens inviting some humans to come and see their world."
And this is for which degree?
This is 18 degrees Taurus. In many places in Ob, though not in the cities, but rather in the fields, meadows, and forests, are doorways. Some in the form of arches, others large holes that have been smoothly carved into rock, and some formed of posts made from trunks of trees. Others are in the form of steps descending into the earth, or even rings of light that hover over the ground and which one may step through if one desires. For the most part, these doorways are shunned or ignored by the people of Ob, not out of fear, but because they are portals into other realms and worlds. And to take a single step through one is to travel very far, which most have not the time or inclination to do. It is taught to the children of Ob that one is not to step through one of those doorways unless one is summoned to do so, and that summoning, when it happens, will always be heard clearly within the mind of the one summoned. And though many step through a doorway and return, many after an hour, or a few days, or weeks, or even longer, it happens sometimes that when a person steps through one of these doorways, they do not return. Not because they become lost, but because the new life they found on the other side is so pleasant to them that all thoughts of returning disappear. For this reason, when it so happens that one steps over the threshold of one of these doors and is never seen again, the person's loved ones are never sad, for they know, most certainly, that the one who is gone is most happy in their new realm. And that was just profound.
Thank you for reading that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Now, what that is called the oracle. Each degree has an oracle. And the oracle is a prose poem that reflects the energy of the degree. Or at least, let's say, reflects an aspect of the degree's energy. And in the Circular Temple book are listed all of the Omega oracles at the end of the degree. Okay? These are poetic interpretations for that degree. I think of degree astrology as what I call the poetic astrology. It's astrology that comes from the intuition. And these degree symbols are meant to be used in a highly intuitive way. Each one of them has written interpretations for it, but the written interpretation for it is only meant to be a suggestion of a possible meaning. You, as an astrologer, as you read these degrees, it's best to allow them to speak to your own imagination, your own intuition. Allow your own insights about them to arise on their own. Also in the Circular Temple book, after the listings of each one of these 4 symbols for each degree, you will find an area in the book that says seed degree and fulfillment degree. Each degree of the zodiac has another degree which represents its seed degree, meaning the place from which it grew, what it comes out of. And the fulfillment degree then is another degree that represents where that original degree is going, where the energy is traveling, or what it's unfolding into. Now, how these seed and fulfillment degrees are picked is by a purely mathematical formula, which I'm not going to go into in this particular video because it's too complicated. But you can then read those seed and fulfillment degrees, and that will give you a better idea of other aspects of that degree's meaning. Anything more we need to say? Can you think of anything?
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about maybe the titles, if you wanted to talk
Oh,
about
yeah. The angels,
the
yeah.
Kabbalah and the angelic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a wonderful book called Birth Angels, and in it the author describes the 72 Kabbalistic angels, and these angels go with the degrees. And in the Circular Temple, at the beginning of each degree, the name of the Kabbalistic angel is given together with what sort of energy that angel has, some key words pertaining to that angel. And then there's also a title given for the degree. And what the title does, it's kind of like a summary of the degree's meaning. But you have to be careful here because the title, the energy of the degree is not limited to the title. In other words, the title expresses certain aspects of that degree, but it certainly does not express the whole degree. Okay? There's kind of no way to really summarize each degree because they are so vast. There's so many worlds contained within that degree. but the title is just meant to give an astrologer an immediate sense of focus to look into that degree. Anything else?
I think that covers that part.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening.